A young man is hit with a violent disease, and his baffled doctors have no idea what is slowly killing him.
I was very concerned that we might be dealing with something that was irreversible, that we might not be able to treat.
The strange symptoms torture the man with unimaginable pain.
Pain was just so unbearable. You couldn't even touch him.
His doctors struggle to unravel the mystery of his strange disease before it destroys their patient. August 1991, late afternoon. In Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, Bobby and his brother David drop into a local bar to unwind after a long day's work. They are remodeling the home Bobby recently moved into with his new wife, Joan. It is a normal ritual for the Curleys.
Mostly talked about, hunting or fishing, but a lot of times we started talking about work. We'd plan what we're going to do the next day.
This evening, however, the ritual changes.
It just didn't go that way this one particular day. He just wasn't in the mood. He wasn't there.
Something is terribly wrong with Bobby.
He started complaining about not feeling real well, and his feet were sore.
Bobby can't even finish his drink.
When he said his feet were sore, I had no idea what was going on. I thought maybe he had shin splints or something.
He heads home early. Bobby has no idea these symptoms are only the beginning of a terrifying disease. He thinks he simply has the flu. Driving is hard. Bobby reaches home still feeling sick. His wife, Joan, is worried about his sudden illness. They married just a few months before, and Joan likes to dote on her new husband.
He found somebody that he seemed to care about, and we were very happy for him.
She was a nice girl. Bobby always said, "Mom, I'm going to find somebody just like you."
Yeah.
So he brought Joanne home. We liked her.
Bobby tells Joan he's going straight to bed. Maybe some sleep will make him feel better. But the next morning, his mysterious illness isn't better. In fact, it's worse. Even before the symptoms started, Bobby's family thought he was pushing himself too hard.
I said, "Bobby, you're working down at the job. You're working in your house. You're working every place." I said, "I think you need a rest." I said, "You look very tired."
Normally, a hearty breakfast would cheer Bobby up. However, this wasn't a normal day. Could his illness be the result of fatigue? Or is it something more serious? Bobby can barely eat, but he still thinks he is just suffering from the flu.
It was just like flu-like symptoms. He wasn't feeling good. He had a headache or whatever, but nothing major, nothing out of the ordinary.
A few days later, Bobby visits his family doctor. He explains that his wife and daughter have recently been ill with the flu, and he suspects he has the same. His doctor agrees, but he can't explain why Bobby has pain and numbness in his hands and feet. But this is one flu virus that won't go away.
I feel horrible.
Day after day, Bobby Curley's health deteriorates.
He didn't know what was happening. He just didn't feel right.
Look,
And his extremities were starting to hurt. His feet, his hands were starting to hurt. I mean, very much.
What kind of flu could make his hands and feet ache?
He didn't know what was happening to him. He's getting worse and worse and didn't know what it was.
Within weeks, Bobby's mysterious illness escalates. Crushing pain grips his chest. Joanne rushes to Bobby's aid. But as quickly as it came on, the pain subsides. Bobby collapses on the couch while Joanne brings him his favorite drink, iced tea. The strange attack is over, but Bobby is scared. He calls a co-worker.
Bobby asked me what it felt like to have a heart attack because I had one previously. I told him, well, you feel like there's tightness in your chest and you have pains in your arm. Well, Bobby said he didn't have any of those symptoms. He just felt like he was on fire and his feet hurt him and his hands were hurting him and he had excruciating pain when he was walking.
No, I mean...
Soon, the mysterious burning in Bobby's arms and legs is so intense, Joanne panics. She must get him to the emergency room.
Bobby described the pain to me as when your arms and legs fall asleep. It has the pins and needles. He said, just imagine that about 100 times worse. The pain was just so unbearable. You couldn't even touch him. He would just cry with the pain.
Bobby feels like his own body is attacking itself. What could be causing this intense pain? Bobby's doctors cannot provide his family with the cause of his bizarre symptoms.
We're all baffled because no one could figure out what was going on, what was wrong with him. He didn't seem to fit any diagnosis that we were looking at.
They ask Bobby about his recent activities. They learn he's an electrician and that he and his brother have been remodeling his home, built over 60 years ago. Could Bobby's illness somehow be linked to the work he's been doing on his home?
We were working out at his house, and there didn't seem to be any problems. And one day he started to get sick.
David Curley can see that something isn't quite right with his younger brother.
As time went by, he slowed down a lot. He didn't know what was happening. He just didn't feel right. And his extremities were starting to hurt. His feet, his hands were starting to hurt.
Has something toxic invaded Bobby's body? Is it possible his home is causing him massive pain and maybe even killing him? After several weeks of fighting off these mysterious and excruciating symptoms, Bobby is admitted to the hospital. Bobby's roommate can immediately see that something is wrong.
He seemed to be a little bit confused even why he was there or what was happening to him. He was going through a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. It seemed to get worse every time he moved.
Bobby's family arrives shortly after he's admitted.
Bob looked terrible to me when he was laying in the bed. He looks just exhausted. You can see the expressions on his face with the pain. I went to give him a hug and he said, please, Sue, don't. I'm just very sore.
Even his nurses can provide little comfort.
He just said, it hurts wherever you touch me. It hurts. You're hurting me.
As his family struggles to come to terms with this mysterious illness, the strain of being sick is also taking its emotional toll.
Bobby was very frustrated. He said, Sue, they don't know what's wrong with me. What's going to happen to me?
Doctors finally come up with a tentative diagnosis.
They have some good news for you.
The doctors really had no positive indication of what actually was attacking Bobby. They thought it was Guillain-Barré, but they weren't even sure that it was that.
Okay.
Guillain-Barré is a rare and sometimes life-threatening disorder in which the body's immune system attacks the nervous system. To confirm this diagnosis, a doctor performs a spinal tap.
While he had the spinal tap, they had the curtain drawn, so I really didn't see what was happening. But I remember them telling him that he had a certain number of hours that he could not move or he could not sit up. So I was talking to him and reminding him, be careful how you move, don't sit up, you don't want to get the headache that they talked about.
That night, Joanne visits Bobby. She brings pizza and iced tea, hoping his favorite foods will tempt him to eat something. Through the drawn curtain, Richard hears her encourage him to eat and drink. The visit from his wife seems to help Bobby.
She seemed to be very caring towards Bob. That evening, he seemed to be okay. His spirits seemed to be a little bit better than they were earlier that day.
But later that night, everything changes. The quiet of evening is shattered by Bobby Curley's screams.
The sounds that I heard the night that he was in that extreme amount of distress are not anything that I could ever describe, not anything that I ever would want to hear again. His pain seemed to be multiplied by 1,000. The nurses were coming into the room, and there was more pain medication. Bob's pain levels were very high. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, they were probably an 8 because of the bed sheet causing him pain and because of the movement that I saw.
If Bobby is suffering from Guillain-Barré, why isn't the medication working? Could he be suffering from some other mysterious disease that his doctors just can't identify? His doctors need answers soon, or Bobby Curley will die. In the fall of 1991, a mysterious and violent disease threatens Bobby Curley's life. Doctors suspect and treat for Guillain-Barré syndrome. His family hopes that with this diagnosis, Bobby's doctors will finally help him get better. But Bobby's family finds him in excruciating pain. Why isn't the medication for Guillain-Barré working? Everything makes the pain worse.
Oh, Mom, he said, I'm in so much pain. He said, please don't even touch me.
For several days, Bobby doesn't get better. But then, the treatment finally begins to work. The medication for Guillain-Barré takes effect, and Bobby is released from the hospital. But his family believes he has not completely recovered.
When Bobby was discharged from the hospital, we were all just frustrated because we didn't know what was wrong or what kind of treatment was going to happen.
Susan's instinct proves correct. Within days of his release, Bobby suffers another mysterious attack.
When we went to the house to visit Bobby, he was in bed and he could hardly maneuver. We literally had to carry him to the bathroom. That scared us. That's when we said something really has to be done here.
He looked at me and he said, Sue, please call the doctor. And I knew at that point, he knew just how bad he was and that he needed to get some help.
Bobby begs his sister to call an ambulance. Paramedics find Bobby Curley lying on the bathroom floor, pale, sweating, and convulsing with dry heaves. All Bobby's family knows is that he is very sick and getting sicker, and no one seems to know why.
When Bobby went to the hospital for a second time, he was progressively getting worse. The doctors didn't know what they were dealing with.
Dehydrated and in intense pain, Bobby is rushed into the hospital's emergency room. Nurses that treated Bobby just a few weeks before are stunned by his rapid deterioration.
He looked like he aged about 20 or 30 years. He was very thin. He looked emaciated. He almost didn't look like the same person.
For God's sake, do something for him. Give him a shot. I could not believe when he came back how sick he was. It was devastating, and I couldn't understand what happened.
Bobby's condition is almost more than his mother can handle.
You better fight this, I said, because we need you around. He said, I'm fighting, Mom. I'm fighting.
But Bobby's doctors still don't know what is attacking his body.
It's very frustrating when the doctors can't tell you what's wrong. You actually feel more helpless than ever.
It is difficult for Bobby's wife, Joanne, to see her husband in so much pain.
She would come out to the nurse's station a lot and say, he's sick, help him, you know, give him something. I want him to have something right now.
She was very upset that he was in pain, and can't we do anything for him, and why aren't we taking care of him?
Over the next 10 days, Bobby's pain never flags. He is weak, nauseous, and continues to vomit. And his sister notices something else.
His hair started to come out. I tried to maybe even brush his hair. It hurt so bad.
Bobby's subtle hair loss is just one more puzzling symptom. He is slipping away, and it seems no one can save him.
I thought to myself, he's going to die. There's something wrong. And it was very frustrating because everybody was trying and nobody could figure out what was wrong or how to help him.
They were running all kinds of tests, and they still couldn't figure out what was wrong. He was still getting worse.
Bobby's family becomes convinced he must change hospitals or he'll die.
I called the doctor at home on a Sunday afternoon, and I begged the doctor, I actually pleaded with him, that we either have to get another opinion, get more help in here, or Bobby has to be transferred.
But something is complicating that decision. Bobby doesn't want to be moved.
He was very concerned about Joanne. Joanne was going through a court case. She had some kind of personal issues going on.
Joanne needed to spend a lot of time in court, and Bobby was worried he would never see her if he moved further away. Not all that long ago, illness was the last thing on Bobby's mind. Joanne was expecting a settlement from the wrongful death of her first husband. And she and Bobby knew they'd receive a lot of money, as much as $1 million. The money was a source of friction. They argued constantly about how to spend it.
Bobby wanted to go in business for himself, start an electrical business, and I don't think Joanne was too keen on that. She didn't want to, she was more or less, she wanted to get recreational out of the money, boats and stuff like that.
Now, months later, money is the last thing on everyone's mind. Bobby's family simply hopes to find out what is causing this violent illness. They know he must be moved to a bigger hospital. It's his only chance for surviving this mysterious disease. They're frustrated that he seems to be putting Joanne in front of his own health.
He knew that he was that sick and there was a possibility that he was going to die. And I knew that too.
Bobby told me to take care of my mother, make sure I take care of Mom. And I told him, I will, but you're going to be around to help us. He knew something was wrong.
The strain of the situation takes its toll on the entire family, especially Joanne.
Joanne changed, but as Bobby got sicker, she seemed to get nastier.
Finally, Bobby must be moved to Hershey Medical Center.
When they moved Bobby to Hershey, we were hoping that they would be able to figure out what was wrong with him. It is a better hospital, a bigger hospital with a lot more resources.
Though unsure of what is to come, the move gives the family hope.
I assumed that they were going to be able to figure out what was wrong with him and make him better.
Though the doctors at Wilkes-Barre were unable to confirm their suspicions, Bobby's working diagnosis when he's admitted to Hershey is Guillain-Barré syndrome. But his new doctors soon realized that this diagnosis may not be right. Some of Bobby's symptoms don't add up.
Normally, when people are tested to see if they can distinguish sharp from dull stimuli, they may be numb and may not be able to do this, but most people do not find it painful. Robert Curley found it to be extremely painful.
His doctors have no idea what could be wrong with Bobby. They hope his medical history might reveal some clue about his mysterious illness. They learn he first became sick just a few short months ago. Easter dinner at Susan's house, a warm and joyful gathering. But all of a sudden, Bobby's hit with something.
He and Joan had come down to my house for Easter, and Bobby wasn't feeling very well. And even during dinner, he laid down on the sofa.
Though Bobby's rarely sick, his family isn't too worried.
Nobody ever thought anything more than, just a flu-type symptom.
Now they know this is the beginning of Bobby's strange illness. Could he have eaten something that brought on his mysterious symptoms? But if so, why didn't anyone else become ill? Bobby's doctors are baffled by his condition.
We were all very puzzled. We try to be able to treat people and get them out of the pain that they're in. But in this case, it was very troubling because we didn't know what had led up to all of this.
Doctors hope to finally confirm or rule out whether Bobby is suffering from Guillain-Barré syndrome.
I was asked to become involved in his testing because of the very severe, painful symptoms he had in his hands and feet. They were hoping that I would be able to do some testing that might show some abnormalities in his nerve conduction.
The test is an ordeal for Bobby and Dr. O'Connell.
Mr. Curley was very agitated. Since the testing that I do can, in some patients, be fairly painful, that didn't do very much to calm him down. As the testing proceeded, he became more and more agitated and more upset. He wanted me to stop, and he, at the very end, threatened to hit me with something, so I was very glad that we were just about done and wrapped it up and were able to get a complete study.
The results of the test perplex Bobby's doctors.
The test helps to show if there has been nerve damage. And if there has been nerve damage, it helps to show just how severe it is.
Dr. O'Connell finds some abnormalities,
Yes.
but not enough of an
And
explanation
that's
for
we're
why
still
Bobby
waiting
is
for
in
the other
agony.
one. And then you can...
What then is attacking Bobby Curley? Not knowing frustrates the doctors.
It was very difficult to see Mr. Curley in so much pain, particularly when we didn't know what caused it. And we didn't know at that point what we could do about it.
What the doctors do know is that Bobby Curley does not have Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Guillain-Barré is a condition which can develop usually starting with motor weakness in the feet and gradually working upwards. There can be some sensory symptoms at the beginning of an attack of Guillain-Barré, but usually it's relatively minor numbness, not that much pain.
But Bobby experiences numbness, pain, and tingling all over his legs. If Guillain-Barré isn't the cause of Bobby's bizarre symptoms, what is slowly killing him?
Aside from Guillain-Barré syndrome, some of the other things that we were thinking that might have caused this very painful neuropathy, one cause is diabetes.
But his doctors soon rule out this possibility.
So we need to find out if there's any environment.
They seem to be at a dead end. Could Bobby's mysterious symptoms be linked to his frequent trips into the woods?
My brother Bob was probably my best friend. We hunted together, fished together. We used to go to Canada together all the time.
Could something have happened on a recent fishing trip to the Canadian woods that caused the onset of Bobby's illness? Something small, something unnoticed at the time.
The doctors were running tests. They couldn't figure out what was wrong. He was continually getting worse. He was getting worse every day.
But when one of Bobby's doctors visits him on his second day at Hershey, something catches his eye.
The doctor walked in and he saw Bobby's hair on the pillow. I think it triggered something for him.
That is a reliable sign of certain types of metal poisoning.
Bobby's family is shocked to learn that his mysterious illness might actually be caused by poison. What could possibly have poisoned him? And how?
It would have to be a selective poison, something that injured the sensory nerves, also something that could cause hair loss.
Dr. Brennan asks Bobby's family for help. What sorts of things could Bobby have come into contact with that could have poisoned him?
He was working, helping somebody in their attic. We brought insulation. He smoked a pipe. They brought his pipe, his hairbrush, his comb, anything at all like that that might have something on there. And the doctors were testing so many different items, and we just didn't know where the poison was coming from.
It's a race against time to isolate the poison in Bobby's body before it kills him. Joanne also collects some of Bobby's clothing from home. David does his part also. Anything to help his brother get well.
I went open up his truck. I cleaned out his glove compartment. I brought a bag of his tools even. I went to one job site where I was working that he had helped me on and grabbed even pieces of insulation and some other stuff on that job. I took them all down to Hershey and gave them to the doctors down there to be tested.
Along with the things the family is delivering, doctors take samples of Bobby's blood and urine to be tested, all in an effort to pinpoint the poison that is rapidly destroying him. Susan moves into a hotel near the hospital to be near her brother. Not long after he's admitted to Hershey, she gets a strange call from Bobby.
Bobby demanded that he talk to me. So I got on the phone and I said, "Bobby, what's the matter?" And he said, "It's not going right." And he was delusional, basically at that point. So I said, "Okay, I'll be right there."
Within minutes, Susan is back at the hospital. She is horrified by what she finds. Bobby is out of control. Whatever is destroying his body now seems to have invaded his mind. There is poison in Bobby Curley's system. It is racking his body and clouding his brain.
You could see the tears in his eyes with the pain, and he tried to be so strong and fight it.
But what kind of poison is slowly killing him, and how did it get into his body? Could Bobby's job be to blame? Before he was hospitalized, he was helping to renovate a chemistry lab at a local university.
When we were down working in the labs, we came in contact every day, all day long, with their chemicals.
Could this be the source of Bobby's illness? Bobby's doctors learn he always ate his lunch at the work site, and he brought a thermos of Joanne's iced tea with him every day. The next morning, Bobby's condition worsens. The family's vigil becomes more distressful.
I sat outside his hospital room for over 8 hours. I just sat there, and I cried and cried and cried. All I could hear him say was, "Sue, Sue, please, Sue, help me, Sue."
Susan rushes in to help her brother. After weeks of being bedridden, she is shocked by what she sees.
When I saw Bobby standing, it was just like unbelievable because I didn't know how he could stand on his feet. I don't know whether at that moment he knew that I was there, but he just kept wandering around the room. I realized at that point that Bobby was delusional.
Nurses must take drastic measures to keep Bobby calm.
They were carrying these restraints, and I knew where they were going with that.
He was flailing around in bed, and at the time they didn't know if it was seizures that he was having because of the high fevers or whether it was just involuntary neuro movements. When his hands were free, he would hallucinate and pick at things in the air.
Susan returns to the hotel. She tells her family about the terrible scene she has just witnessed.
And she says, "Mom, be prepared." I said, "Be prepared for what?" I said, "Bobby, okay?" And she said, "Yeah, but he's in restraints." I said, "Susan, I can't see him. I cannot see him in restraints. I wouldn't go in the room."
David and Susan agree that's best. They leave for the hospital, promising to keep their mother informed of Bobby's condition. They are amazed when they see him. Just as suddenly as Bobby's health took a frightening turn for the worse, he is surprisingly improved. He's so calm, his nurses even remove his restraints.
Thank you, ma'am. We thought that whatever was wrong, he was responding to some sort of treatment.
Bobby and my brother Dave always used to go to this one bar back in Wilkes-Barre area. So when David had come down, he even brought Bobby a baseball cap from the bar, and we had it on Bobby. We all kind of kid around and stuff like that. So we were trying to have a good time with him.
When I brought the pizza and soda back, we were having a fairly good time. Bobby was happy, seemed to be enjoying the pizza, which was good because he wasn't eating at the time. And he had some soda, which was good. I mean, he needed nourishment other than IV.
They were all kind of having a little celebration.
Because Joanne's court case has consumed most of her time, Bobby's family is happy that she's at the hospital to see his improvement. They've noticed that as Bobby's illness has worsened, she's become more distant.
She was at Hershey as much as she could, I believe, but not all the time, not constantly. And when she was there, she just seemed like another person visiting somebody down there. She didn't seem to be worried that anything was going on, that anything was going to happen to Bobby.
But today, she's by her husband's side for his party.
We'll be right here.
When the soda runs out, Joanne offers to get more. By the time Joanne gets back from the soda machine, the family has decided it's time to end the pizza party so that Bobby can rest. But Joanne doesn't want to leave her husband yet. There's one more thing she wants to make sure he does that night. Get a little more nourishment. Within hours, Bobby's rest is over. The excruciating pains return. What kind of disease could be attacking his body so viciously?
It was quite difficult, as a physician, to see these radical changes, particularly in the setting of such a mystery when we did not know what had caused them.
Bobby seemed to be making a recovery. Why did he suddenly relapse? The next morning, Bobby suffers a cardiac arrest. His doctors and nurses raced to save his life.
They couldn't seem to get a rate and a rhythm back. He was defibrillated several times. He had this high fever. He wasn't responding to any medications.
They are able to save him, but Bobby barely regains consciousness. Doctors have no idea what's attacking Bobby's body. They must solve the mystery, and fast, or Bobby Curley will die. Bobby Curley has suffered an agonizing and debilitating illness. His doctors suspect poison has been slowly killing him for months. Bobby made a slight recovery, but immediately relapsed. Much depends on confirming doctors' initial suspicions that Bobby had poison in his system. His doctors consult with a toxicologist on their perplexing case.
We suspected that it was either arsenic or thallium poisoning. We couldn't confirm that, however, until we saw the results of the urine thallium test, which had been sent to a toxicology reference laboratory.
The wait for lab results, though not long, seems endless for Bobby's family. When they come back, his doctors are amazed by the results.
They confirmed that he had very large amounts of thallium in his body.
Thallium is a heavy metal found naturally in the environment in small amounts. It was once used to exterminate rodents, but was banned for that purpose years ago.
This certainly is not something you see every day because it's been so long since thallium was used commercially.
Bobby's doctors are baffled. How could he have been exposed to so much thallium? Bobby's family can offer few answers.
Joanne just looked at him like, with this questioned look and said, thallium. Well, she never heard of it. I never heard of it. No, my family had never really heard of it.
Bobby's doctors question his family. Finally, Joanne tells them there's only one possibility.
At the time that Bobby first started getting sick, he was working at a local university in their chemistry department. Joanne immediately said that that's where it could have come from.
But how did Bobby get the poison in his body?
Thallium is a metal that is actually taken into the body very easily. It has no odor and it has no taste, so that people can absorb very large amounts of it without even knowing it.
Thallium poisoning can occur just by touching it, breathing it in, or by ingesting it. Could Bobby have been accidentally exposed at work? Are his co-workers also affected? Occupational Safety and Health Administration investigators descend on the lab. They find 5 containers of thallium in a storeroom. But when the investigators find that the containers haven't accidentally leaked and that the rest of the lab is clean of the toxic poison, his family fears the worst.
When we found out that there were some bottles of thallium at the college where Bobby was working at, we just said, maybe it could be. Maybe they were goofing around as a prank and it got out of hand. We really didn't know if that was the truth or not, but it was a theory. I mean, it was a believable theory.
While they don't know how he was poisoned, Bobby's doctors hope they can somehow leach the deadly metal from his body. It is his only chance for survival.
I instituted chelation therapy, which is a binding therapy to remove the toxin from his body. I was hoping that by removing the thallium, we would have a chance to prevent Mr. Curley from getting worse.
But Bobby's doctors soon realize it's too late. No amount of medicine can save their patient.
Thank you very much.
The poison has done too much damage.
Doctors told us there was no brain activity at all.
And no chance of recovery.
There was nothing they could do. He was going to die. I of course, was very, very upset, and I didn't know, where do you go from here? What do you do? So all we did was pray.
Eventually, Joanne makes the difficult decision to take her husband off life support.
I was very upset about it. We thought maybe we'd have Bobby just a little bit longer, because I didn't think it was time for him to go yet.
Bobby's family gathers around him.
We visited Bobby as much as we possibly could that day. We stayed with him, we cried, we hugged each other, everything. We all said our goodbyes.
Bobby Curley's agony will soon end. His life slips away hours later. But a terrifying question remains. How did the poison that killed him get into his body? Shortly after Bobby's death, Joanne approaches Dr. Donovan outside the hospital. She asks him to test her and her daughter for thallium poisoning.
We didn't know what Mr. Curley's source of thallium poisoning was, and it was possible that it was something in the home that she and her daughter had also been exposed to.
Joanne's fears are confirmed. She and her daughter test positive for thallium.
The amounts of thallium that Joanne Curley and her daughter had in their body weren't high enough to cause symptoms, but they were definitely higher than normal, well above normal, enough to confirm that they had had an unusual exposure to thallium.
But Bobby's exposure was more than unusual. It was astronomical. How did the enormous amount of thallium that killed Bobby Curley get into his system? Was it an accident or a prank gone wrong? Or was it murder? Could someone want to poison the entire Curley family? After months of torturous suffering, Bobby Curley is dead of thallium poisoning, but no one knows how or why.
I needed to know who did this to my brother. I felt that Bobby was actually tortured. He was in so much pain, it was just unbearable to see him. And I needed to know who did this to him and why they would do such a thing.
OSHA investigators find 5 containers of thallium at the chemistry lab Bobby was renovating. But they find little evidence that Bobby could have been accidentally exposed to thallium on the job. To help rule out whether Bobby's death was an accident, his co-workers take blood tests to check whether they too have the poison in them. The results are negative. Could it be that Bobby Curley died from some horrible prank at work? Did someone purposely give him thallium?
Bobby was a good electrician. Most of the workers he got along well with. They joked a lot. Sometimes they might have joked too much. They used to play practical jokes on each other.
Bobby Curley's death soon becomes a police matter.
We put everyone and anyone in a suspect pool, anyone who could have had access to him during that time.
Joanne tells detectives there were people Bobby didn't get along with, including co-workers.
There were a few that didn't like him because he was such a young guy and he was in charge.
She also gives them some items related to Bobby's work, his clothes, a backpack, and the thermos he took to the job every day. Bobby's thermos tests positive for thallium. Joanne explains the link.
She would make the iced tea for him at home. He would take it to work. He would bring it home. She would save any unused iced tea and consume some with him at dinner time. This linked the source of thallium, potentially a co-worker who would have placed it in his thermos, and also provided an explanation as to her potential exposure.
investigators uncover 2 more thermoses, and one tests positive for thallium. But one of Bobby's co-workers tells police that he doesn't recall Bobby bringing either of them to work. Only the red and white one filled with Joanne's iced tea. If Bobby wasn't exposed at the chemistry lab, where did the deadly poison come from? Investigators test Bobby and Joanne's home, looking for any signs of thallium. A spot in the basement comes up positive for the poison.
It's very difficult to find thallium. It was banned quite a few years ago, and so it's only found in old rat poisons and in chemistry labs or in the industry.
Rat poison was used by tenants in the 1960s who rented the house from Joanne's grandmother. Could Bobby's own home somehow be the culprit? Investigators send samples of Bobby's hair to a forensics expert for testing. This time, they need more detailed information. They hope knowing when Bobby Curley was poisoned will help pinpoint how it happened.
What you can find out with the hair is when the poison was administered. You can take a small piece of hair that's right at the root, and you see what's happened just a few days ago. You take it at the tip. In this case, it was a 19-centimeter tip. It's basically what happened just about a year earlier, what was happening then. And by sectioning it and analyzing each of the sections, we were able to construct a timeline.
Whoever poisoned Bob Curley was able to do so over a long period of time and to specifically target him and his food and drink. The only person who would have been in a position to do that was Joanne Curley herself.
Every single day, right? Getting to change anything. Sure.
But why would Joanne want to poison her husband?
Okay, I guess.
Bobby's family thinks they know.
Money, right?
Mr. Curley had approximately $300,000 in life insurance benefits that she was the sole beneficiary for. Additionally, she was involved in a civil lawsuit at the time of her husband's illness. It's common knowledge that they were anticipating a sizable award.
That award, an anticipated $1 million, was a source of friction between Bobby and Joanne. They couldn't agree on how to use it. The $1 million from her lawsuit wasn't enough for Joanne. She also wanted Bobby's life insurance money. Investigators conclude she began poisoning Bobby shortly after they were married, long before he began working at the chemistry lab. The slow murder boldly continued in the hospital, even as doctors fought so valiantly to save his life. And what made it all possible was a deadly poison forgotten for years in an old basement.
Joanne Curley discovered the thallium poison, so she put some of it in an envelope and got rid of the rest. Thallium in salt form is a very effective rat poison, but it's also very effective against people.
Tasteless, odorless, and deadly, thallium was mixed into his iced tea over and over. While it appeared Joanne was being a loving wife, she was, in fact, ensuring a horrible death for her husband. After suffering through the agony of Bobby's last days, all his family has left are memories.
She didn't have to do that. Bobby was a good husband and a good father to her daughter. Look at Bobby. She just took something away from us that was very precious.